Hey everyone, welcome to a very special edition of Geeking Out Live. I am your host, Adriana Villela, coming to you from Toronto, Canada. Now, if you've been watching the show for a while, you might have noticed that last episode, I had a lovely panel of Gen X and millennial guests talking about what it was like to code in the era of AI-assisted coding. And as it turns out, it's only fair to ask the Gen-Zers what it's like for them, because I had made some assumptions initially on Gen Z have an easier time with vibe coding. So as it turns out, I was at this Intuit meetup, I would say end of May. It was part of Toronto Tech Week. And I was giving a talk on AI, and a group of Gen Zers came to talk to me after my talk, and we got to chatting, and I thought, hey, wouldn't it be awesome to have them on the podcast? And so here we are, another special live edition of Geeking Out, and I'm very happy to bring on my lovely panel of Gen Z guests. So let's bring them onto the stage. Yay, super excited. Welcome, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
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 So nice to have you all on. Well, as we get started, so first of all, let's do intros.
So, hi, I'm Divyasha. I'm essentially an AI engineer. I started out as a software engineer back in India and then moved to the US for my master's and have been in the AI ML space since. I've been building things like LLM pipelines, agentic systems. You know the drill. Um, I'm in Toronto now. It's been only 4 months, and it's been nice. It actually got me to you guys. And honestly, this podcast might genuinely be my highlights of Toronto. And
Awesome.
I'm a front runner Gen Z, like the OG Gen Z, if you may.
Awesome.
Hey everyone, I'm Stella Gu, and I'm based in Toronto. I've always been based in Toronto, and I just completed my final year of computer science at McMaster, and so I'll be starting at Manulife in Toronto as a platform engineer, and I'm really excited to be here today.
Awesome. That's so cool. Fresh grad. Amazing.
I'm Rachelle De Man, and I'm also newly graduated from McMaster University, based in the GTA. I've done a lot of web development, testing, security. I've interned at places like Okta, Vidyard, 1Password, and Google, and I'll be returning to Google as a junior in the fall.
Awesome.
And last, I'm Amrithaa Logeswaran. So I'm a second-year integrated engineering student at Western, currently going into my third year. I've done a lot of project work specifically with aero design, and I also do policy work on the side with the provincial government. So I'm working on Save OSAP London, which is basically advocating for students to get their OSAP back. So that's what I've been doing currently.
And for folks who are outside of Canada, outside of Ontario, what is OSAP?
OSAP is basically like a needs-based way of funding your education. It's specifically divided in loans and grants. So a lot of low-income students generally go for OSAP. It just helps out with funding for post-secondary expenses.
Great. Well, so nice to have all four of you on. I'm very excited for this panel, and I can't wait to hear everyone's perspectives on AI assisted development and what it has done for you. But first, let's go back to the beginning and tell our audience what was your first programming language. So let's start with Divyasha.
Oh, for me, it was Logo. I don't know if you remember. It was one with the turtle. That's the one. I think you would all remember because it was a universal experience. We used to go to computer labs and drive that turtle around, make different shapes. It actually used to be one of the highlights of my day. I used to have so much fun moving it around. Like it used to move at my will, and I was eager to crack the code why it was moving. That's actually what got me into programming. Well, now we're all here developing systems that are, AI driven now. I don't know if it's poetic or if it's terrifying, but here we are.
Fair enough. That's so cool. That's a blast from the past. I did not expect Logo to be your first.
I'm expecting everyone knows that because everyone used to go to the lab and play around with it. I don't know it was for us at least that way.
That's awesome. Very cool. Yeah. How about you, Stella?
Yeah, I don't think I've actually heard of the language you used, Divyasha, but my first programming language was Turing. It's like a Canadian programming language, and I think I started in grade 10. So that was my first experience working with a programming language. And I remember for my first project, I created this online store selling ice cream. So that was fun and
I mean,
really
what
the
does a
intro
kid want?
to yeah.
That's awesome. Wow, you're in Toronto when you say that your first language is Turing, because that is a very quintessentially like Toronto high school experience. Because I don't think anyone outside of the area has heard of Turing.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think I've heard of it. I think it's we all have very different cultural experiences.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah.
I think it's so cool. How about you,
Yeah.
Rachel?
I feel like, with all these niche languages, I'm coming out here. My first language was Python, a lot more standard and, kind of basic of what you would expect. Also, my first encounter was in a high school class. I feel like a lot of Gen Z girls or Gen Z people in general have it that way just because, that's our first chance of really like seeing into it. And I remember my first real assignment was like a really simple, choose your own adventure game meant to teach about print statements. And it was supposed to be a few hundred lines, but like many thousand lines later, I was going crazy. I was like, there's so much you can do with it, like randomness, mini games, timings, all that. So that's what really got me, to fall in love with programming, was just the freedom that you get with, everything.
I think that's me still every day. Yeah, oh my God, AI can do so much. Or coding can do so much. Oh my God, I can make this, I can make that.
Absolutely.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's so magical. It really is. I think that was my thing. It was like, I can automate a thing to do another thing. What? Like, the first time I got my computer to like play a little music thing, I was like, what is this? And how about you, Amrithaa?
So I got into coding because of gaming, actually. So I don't know if you guys, I think you guys might have been around for this for the Gen Z people here, but it was either Lua, like Roblox Lua, because I wanted to make my own like fighting like RPG game, but I needed to script things, and I was like, I don't know how to script this. Let's just go on YouTube and figure it out. So that's how I got started. I also learned how to use Scratch in like third grade. So yeah, that was a more Mississauga. That might have been like a GTA thing, Scratch or Roblox Lua, I would say. But a lot of people I see program also kind of came from like game development, from what I've noticed.
That's actually true. That was my dream as well, become a game developer, and that never happened, but that's where I started off.
That's funny. I remember when I first got into programming, and this was like in the 90s. I'm like, oh, it'd be cool to be a game developer. And then I got a book on game development, and I'm like, no, thanks. Okay. Okay, so let's get on with our first question. So, we talked about our magical experience with like a programming language and hand coding. What about like your first experience with AI assisted coding? What was that for you? How did you go about it? Let's start with Stella.
Yeah. So I think my first proper experience with AI assisted coding was during my final year project. And I was working on like this backend portion of a mobile app. And so I used GitHub Copilot in VS Code, like the integrated thing. And I really liked how it could access all my files without like taking too much control from me. Like I know there's other applications where it kind of has more control over all your files and does things for you a lot more. And yeah, so overall, I did feel like it was a positive addition because it was able to do like all the mundane tasks, like for example, reformatting things and like making sure everything is implemented with like the same structure or like method and like formatting to like standardize everything. And because I was working a lot with APIs, it was able to help me like format the input and outputs according to all the requirements that are already available. So I could just like tell it to follow this and then it would get it done for me. And even like the supporting functionality, I feel it was able to do a lot of that. And I feel like because it was like more of a, like it was a project on something that I've never worked with, I could also ask it for suggestions. Like whenever I was like, oh, do you think this will be better or if that will be better? And then I could ask it for further clarification or like evidence of why it was choosing one option over the other. And then I would also like do a Google search just to make sure everything it was saying was like actually valid. But yeah, I feel like overall it's a positive experience. But something that like to keep in mind while using AI, or like what I do when I use AI, is that it will sometimes mess up the code base. So I always make sure that it's like not taking things too far, and that I always have a copy of like something working beforehand. And I feel like it is important to realize like how much AI is doing for you, because I feel like whatever I tell AI to do for me, like I'm slightly losing the ability to do myself. So then like I make sure to read over everything that it's doing. And yeah.
I love that. So you're basically a trust but verify and abdicate, like the boring stuff that you don't want to deal with kind of person when working with AI. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. And I think you make a really good point that the more stuff you let AI do, the more stuff like you start forgetting yourself. Yeah. Other thoughts. Amrithaa, how about you? What was it like for you?
For me, I first used Claude Code to help me out in second year. So in second year, we had like a business and design class like at Western that we had to take, at least for my degree. And basically at the end of it, we needed to make like our product was we wanted to make an app for like roommates that like who have like similar lifestyle preferences, they can match together. And then based on a couple of questions like, hey, you left your food in the fridge in this section even though it's mine, and that was the whole gist of it. And for me, I used Claude Code specifically for Expo Go. Like, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but it's like that one coding language where you can like demo it on your mobile app. So that's what I used along with the group member. And for me, I just used Claude Code to double check everything. I was like, is this right? And if it's not right, please explain this to me in 5-year-old terms, super simple, super dumbed down. Am I right? And it worked. Like, it was pretty fine for the most part. But my group member ended up just using Cloud Code for like the entirety of the code, which worried me a little bit because I was like, it's a bit wonky. But I mean, I'm not a programmer personally, so I'm only an engineer, so I can't really speak from experience, I guess. But that was my experience for the most part.
But your instinct was still like you don't want it to do everything for you.
I didn't want it to do everything for me because I feel like that takes away from why I'm doing this project in the first place. Like, yes, I'm not the coolest programmer in the world, but I feel like if I at least know how to code like one single line of the thing I'm making, I think that's okay in my opinion. Like, as long as you use AI to double check your stuff, as long as you're right, and like if you really don't know, like, and you can't find any tutorial on YouTube or on the internet how to code this thing, I think that's justifiable to use AI. But it's like a really hit or miss. Like when my group mate used Claude to like code the whole app, I was like, okay, I'm frightened that it's all right. I'm a bit frightened personally because I spent like hours like trying to actually code it. So it's like I feel like less gratified that I just made Claude do my whole project. Not too sure though.
Yeah, I feel that. It's not that same sense of accomplishment.
I think we can all agree. We just need the direction and AI to review it. But in the end, it should be you doing the stuff so that, at least, you had your part in it.
Yeah. I'm totally with you on that. And how about, so Divyasha, what about you? Like, what was your first experience like?
Yeah, I think it has to be Copilot as well. I think for a lot of developers, it was. And I personally loved it mostly because it got me through my homework. But what I genuinely like about it is that it makes things possible that I couldn't have reached on my own. Essentially, the ideas would just be in the backlog on the back burner. But now it has made it possible. It basically raises your ceiling. the other thing is that, which people really don't talk about enough, is that it's incredible, especially for my ADHD brain. I just have a lot of ideas haphazardly running, so that a lot of modules of code. So it helps me collect my thoughts and actually structure them into a system. But I also don't like a few things about it. Like, first, I don't like the way it's deeply sycophantic. It will agree with me on everything and anything.
Yes.
Like, I don't need that yes sir attitude. I want someone to be, brainstorming with me and critiquing if I'm doing something wrong. And then, but when it does, it hallucinates with a lot of confidence. So you're either, getting flattery or fiction. Both are dangerous.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. Yeah, the sycophantic part of it, I think, is I'm like, I don't need someone to pat me on the back. Like,
right.
I had a really funny thing happen the other day. I was using Claude Code. I had started with Copilot as well, and I was using a cheapy model, and I was using Claude Code with like Sonnet, and I was asking it a question, and it goes, honestly, I don't know. Here are the things that you can look into. And I'm like, finally, it's not making shit up.
Yeah, I mean that's the hardest part, to not let it make shit up. You like have to explicitly tell it again and again, please do not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was surprised because I didn't even say don't make shit up. It just like naturally, I'm like, oh, thank God someone put that in as like as a directive. How about you, Rachel? What was your experience like for vibe coding the first time?
I'd say for vibe coding, it was pretty conflicted because back when AI was dumber, I kind of really loved it because it was like I could just click tab and it's like it's reading my mind. I don't have to manually type out all my stuff, but that was like the extent of it. Now that AI is a lot more capable, I am like kind of conflicted because it is undeniably way faster, especially way more efficient for, us who are starting in our careers and might not be able to go through all these things as fast. And it's great. I love how, like, once again, mundane work, you can just skip by it. And I've also found it's really great for like niche, easy to encounter bugs that'll bring you down like a rabbit hole for the next several hours. Like those can just be bypassed. But it's a double-edged sword as well. I feel like it really, the biggest thing for me I don't like about it is like, I think Amrithaa mentioned a bit earlier, like it takes away the opportunity and the joy of overcoming the challenges in coding. And that's something I don't really love about AI. Like I really enjoy the process, and it's changed a lot with how AI is. And then on top of that, AI can really easily misunderstand and overcomplicate and go off on things that you don't know unless you really clearly communicate with it.
Yeah.
So it's a bit complicated.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like I was on Friday, I was building out this project that and it was doing it in Node.js for me. I don't know JavaScript anything. I don't want to. And so first of all, it's building out this thing for me in a language I don't know. And then I was like, I spent so long trying to communicate the requirements to it. And I was like, God damn it, if I knew this language, I could actually save some time and try to code it myself rather than actually try to communicate my requirements. Like, and even when you get it working, it's a different sense of satisfaction than when you've hand coded it, because it's like, I didn't troubleshoot it. I just told it how to do the thing better.
Absolutely.
I've just felt so dumb.
Even when you have to tell it, I've faced this. I like to call this the 80-20 problem, where it'll get you the 80% of the way super fast, but the remaining 20%, it just keeps circling over and it keeps making the same mistake. You just can't get through it to actually do the stuff for you.
Yep. Yeah, totally.
So in the end, it just feels like, okay, I could have just learned the language and hand coded it myself.
I know. I would have felt a lot more accomplished.
Yeah. I feel like when something's like completely vibe coded, like I almost can't feel like I can take ownership over it. It's like I did make something, but like I don't know if I really did.
Or did I just like or is it like a ChatGPT wrapper? Like I feel that sometimes.
Yeah, I feel that too. Like on the one hand, I forget which one of you mentioned it, and I so related to it that it's like, it's great to get like your projects off the back burner. But like, so yeah, I'm working on a thing that I would have never worked on before because I wouldn't even know where to start. So great, I can work on side projects. I used it to help me like finally launch my website. I've had a domain parked for like 25 years. I finally launched my website. But there's like 0 sense of accomplishment, man.
Right.
100%.
For me, I think it helps, at least especially with the front end, because I don't really like to dabble with it. But yes, in the end, it's like you really don't know what's happening and you just didn't make it yourself. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's either getting things done or getting that satisfaction. It's a speed versus satisfaction in the end.
Yeah, like I feel like it's like it takes away from the learning experience like that, like the very glimmer that I once had of coding because I was trying to make like a really bad RPG fighter game. Like it takes away that shine because I'm not the one who's really putting in so say the work or so say like the most of the code in because I had to ask Claude how to do this. And then I also tend to be like, make it super duper easy to read so a 5-year-old can understand actually. And it's like I don't feel that sense of accomplishment when I just use Claude, like when I use it to code in that way, even though it is technically more efficient and it's technically like if you were like a super cool businessman, you must be like frothing at the mouth because of AI right now. Because oh my goodness, I can fire all my software engineers because I don't need to pay them shit because Claude can do it. And it's like, well, what's the point then? You know? So I guess it's like
totally. Yeah, and it won't necessarily be great quality, which is the other thing. Maybe we'll get to that point. I have mixed feelings too. I feel all your pains. And you know, I think one thing that I want to ask is when I came into this, like I had this assumption that, you know, like you're all Gen Zers. You have probably come up more AI native than, you know, old farts like me, Gen Xers. And I had made the assumption that it would be an easier transition for you. Now, is that a fair assumption? Thoughts, feelings?
That's a difficult question. It's not an easy transition, obviously. I feel like it has actually elevated the bar for you now. So now, before what was expected out of you, before it took 20 people, team, and months of work to build a system, and now it takes like 2 developers and AI and a week to do the same thing. So the baseline is higher now, and so are the expectations, which makes it quite a difficult transition, honestly.
I would say when it comes to not to cut anyone off, when it comes to transitioning into AI, it depends on who you ask. Because we're a bunch of people in the tech space, I would say it didn't take me that much time to get adjusted to ChatGPT, but I initially used ChatGPT for like I never touched AI in high school ever until I came into university. And for me, it was ChatGPT first, and then I switched over to Claude, and I found that first, when you start using AI, like at the very start, you get like a little too dependent on it. Like I personally felt that I was getting way too dependent on it. And I was like, hold on, where are my critical thinking skills that I need as an engineer to make sure my bridge does not collapse anytime soon? So that's a bit worrying. But also I talk to a lot of engineers. Like I'm like in my engineering community, I know like civil software, chemical engineers, mechanical engineers. And I would say most of them adjusted really easily to AI because again, you're getting tortured by like 7 different courses of like doom and despair. So it's in your benefit to use AI. It's in your benefit to use it. But when you get too over dependent on it, then that's kind of a tricky and slippery slope because I found it very easy to adjust to ChatGPT and Claude. I think the hallucinating part was the weirdest part of it all. But again, I treat AI like, do this for me, that's it. Do this for me, that's it. I don't really put feelings into it in my prompts, unfortunately. But there is the real thing of AI psychosis where some people do get emotionally invested in their chatbots, which is I don't know how that happens. I know it can happen, but again, I found it easy to adjust, but I can't say the same for everyone else.
I think something important to consider when you're thinking about how like Gen Z is adapting is that a lot of our first experience with code wasn't that long ago. Like my very first print, put console log, whatever, was about 8 years ago. So we are a generation that has always grown up, I feel like, on unstable ground. Things have been changing at a very rapid rate, like throughout all the time that we've been learning code. So in a way, I feel like the foundations that people should need to be able to use AI code, like, AI programming to its fullest, are something that we just don't have at this time. And because of how AI is so much more able to like do things at our level, as a junior in this field, you always have to sit and ask yourself, how much of my potential growth will I sell for a faster fix? If AI can already do this, am I going to put in the 5-6 hours to code it and make sure it's good and learn this process? Or do I do it in 30 minutes with AI, but I don't really know, like, how do you know to trust the AI if you don't have that experience backing you?
Yeah,
I so agree. Sorry, go ahead.
Nice. I think I have like a similar sentiment where it's like, because we're still young and like we have AI like early on in our career, it's pretty like it's easy to adjust, at least for me, to use AI in like my workflow. But the part that I find hard to adjust is like when companies, or like how to adjust to companies like sort of pushing AI a lot, or like maybe even forcing their employees to use AI. Like I'm not really sure how to adjust to that. Or like when like the higher ups, for example, expect you to produce work faster because you have the help of AI. But I don't think it's like that straightforward. It's like me plus AI equals faster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the problem. Like at first glance, everyone thinks that, it's AI has made things easier, but we're churning our code at a much higher rate, and now that means we have to review the system design and find failure points, debug without even knowing what the actual internals are. So, and we have to do that at the same rate. So it's just AI hasn't reduced the complexity, but actually compressed everything into much smaller timeline and amplified everything else for us, especially.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I just want to go back to something that was mentioned a little bit earlier. Especially for, Rachel and Stella, you just graduated university. Amrithaa, you're still in university. All three of you probably, like, what have you seen? What have you experienced in terms of, we talked about workplace expectations of using AI to create software. What about school expectations? What, especially in like engineering programs, what are the rules? Because I, like, my daughter has just graduated high school, and they've been like, she's even been in some classes where they're like, you can't use a computer. You have to do like, you can't use AI to help you with your assignments. But when you're going to university and you're studying, you're going into a field that is going to be like, is an AI, where AI is a thing. How has that been? Like, what have you noticed?
I would say, from the perspective of somebody who has like been on student council and has worked with professors as well as part of like student senate, like at my school, I would say academic, or in this case, bureaucratic inertia is a real thing where there's a lot of red tape around the processes of like how institutions move. And because education is just, it's a very not, it does not like adapting to anything for the most part. Like we've tried to implement AI policies, and it's like, it's been a really big debate, even in like post-secondary unis as well. Like I worked like last year, I was a part of like USA's delegation, which is basically like the Ontario equivalent of McMaster, Western, like McMaster, Western, U of T, like a lot of Ontarian post-secondary schools. Like we were having this same discussion, like all the student unions. We were like, what is an AI policy that like universities can agree to? And like, again, we can't really come to a good agreement because do I want my lawyer using ChatGPT and being like, trust me, bro, I can get you out of jail? I would feel a bit worried if my lawyer was using ChatGPT. But do I have like the grounds to say that when I'm using AI in my work? Because it's it's technical, it's more efficient, yes, but where do you like draw the line? And I think most universities just don't know where to start drawing that line, which is why it's so easy to just ban it, like ban it to the ground. Like, don't use AI in this class, or if you use it, academic probation and everything elsewhere. It's very easy to just like slap a band-aid and be like, don't use AI at all in any of your classes. Like even in first year, like we had like a programming intro to Java class, and I think at least a good chunk of those people definitely use ChatGPT in their code, and I could tell because I kept seeing M dashes all the time. So it's very, very
telltale.
Yeah, like, but I would say institutions, like academic institutions, just don't know how to adapt. So the easiest solution is to just ban the thing itself. Like they've tried their best, I would say, but it's like the AI checkers just don't work because you can't tell itself, right? I can't accuse someone who's been using M dash in their writing like, yeah, you're using ChatGPT.
No,
Like
no,
they've been
you're using AI. That's AI slop. You can't just really say that because a lot of people used to before it as well.
I think
I feel like.
Oh, sorry, what were you gonna say?
I guess I'll go first. I feel like I sort of have like a different experience. Like it's very like prof dependent. So some of the profs will say like don't use AI in my class. Like that is like academic dishonesty to use AI in your like any of the work you submit. And I've also had profs that are like, like you can use AI because like I see that it'll be something that you'll like use in the future in work or something. But then it's like declare what you used AI for. Like tell me exactly what parts you've used AI to help you do your work. And I feel like that's like it's nice to have those profs that see it as something we also need to figure out how to use properly.
Yeah, I was going to say something actually pretty similar. I feel like on an institutional level, education is slow, but we also have to consider these professors whose curriculums 4 years ago were perfectly fine, and now, especially with like earlier classes, like they have to redo everything because AI can solve it all in an instant. I feel like for earlier year classes, it's a lot more like don't use AI at all, which I think is a good thing. You really need to know those foundations, and AI can do them so easily. But as you get into like higher year classes, professors, it really is more professor based, whether or not they're able to update their curriculum in time or what their thoughts are on in AI and the industry. Because I think everyone knows that our future will have AI in some shape or form, no matter what. So a lot of the more like forward-thinking professors are the ones who are saying, here's an assignment, I intend for you to use AI, or I encourage you to use AI, or just make sure you know how you're using your AI.
It's really hard as well because I speak from like the more institutional side of it. Like, and again, even the prof, it's like depends professor to professor as well. Like your professor, like my professors were all like, use AI as needed. If you have a question, just email me, but just use it as needed. Like you shouldn't like if you're using AI to do all my labs, that's great. My 60% kill clause final written in person will kill you anyways. So it solved itself, but again, it depends course on course because if you have like a writing assignment or like something else, I don't really know what you do there to be honest. Because like we have a bunch of final exams, so if you've been using AI for like the past 6 months, don't worry, my final exam will get to you personally.
That's true. The final exam will like determine whether or not you've actually picked anything up because you can't AI your way out of this one. How about you, Divyasha? What I know you've been like you're probably like our eldest. You even mentioned you're our eldest Gen Z-er.
Yeah, that's like the son of Gen Z.
Yeah, what's like did you even like in your schooling did you catch like the tail end of that? What did you experience?
Yeah, I did. I mean, there were a lot of regulations to not use AI. Professors were trying to adapt their courses according to the AI world because now they knew that a lot of students were using AI with their assignments. So either, as Amrithaa said, they would just ban the use of AI because they can't adapt to it right now. They're having a hard time not letting the students use AI. But some professors have had realize the fact that we're gonna anyway do it. So they made the assignments harder. They made, something like an open book test that you can refer all AI you want, but in the end, you're gonna need to use this part of your body to actually get to, the answer that I want. So I think with the now what how they adapted to it was that let's test their thinking out more than actually the ability to write the code or just get a straightforward answer. So some of the professors that I had, they adapted to it by making it more subjective, actually analyzing the thinking behind it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. This is all stuff I didn't have to contend with when I was in university, and now these are things like when you brought up the point of like professors having to adapt their curriculum to like now incorporate AI. That's just, it's wild. And to realize that, a curriculum that would have worked for years and years and years, and then all of a sudden it's being completely disrupted, and now they're being forced to like rewrite their curriculum, which is kind of making me laugh a little bit, because I don't know about you, but my professors in university, oh my God. I was lucky if I don't know. I feel like they would rather do their research than actually teach a class. And now to force them to switch up their curriculum, like, oh my God.
Not again.
It's too much work even for them, I feel.
That's the thing as well. Like, as much as we say force them to do it, some of them just choose not to. And then the class just is absolutely up in arms because they just haven't updated anything. And, times have changed.
Yeah.
And I think we have to now adapt to it, because we know that we know that everyone is going to use AI now. And it's important that we actually let them use it and actually elevate whatever they are doing. Use it as a tool and not the end goal.
My strife with AI when it comes to like when professors allow students to use AI is more like, where and when are you supposed to use it? Because if it's like a programming class and you update the curriculum to be like, hey, I used AI for this part, this segment of code, my formatting was off, I can understand that, but I only understand that because I code a little bit. Like, I don't claim to be like the coolest coder ever. I can get the bare minimum done. Like, I can do that, right? But it's like, do I start using AI in like, let's say, a visual arts class? Like, is that acceptable? Can I use it in my science or my chemistry class? Is that acceptable? Like, it's the where do I use AI and is it acceptable to use AI? Because again, it varies between professors and it varies if they cared enough to update their curriculum. Like, it's very, very dependent, I feel, like when to use it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I was looking at this like purely from like an engineering computer science viewpoint, but it is interesting for other areas of study, like the arts, the humanities. It turns these things onto their heads. The visual arts one is always one that gets me a little bit, because like I'm not an artist, and for a really long time, like when I was prepping talk slides, like I think from 2023 onwards, I would use like AI to generate like fun images for my talk slides. And I'm like, oh, this is hilarious. I can get it to do like capybaras with like superhero capes. And then after a while, I was like, oh, this feels so icky. I feel like I've got a number of artist friends, and they're like, this is so gross. And I would feel really bad for them, because like it does take a lot of like planning and effort and time to like, put together artwork. And then here I am, like just writing a prompt and it's drawing stuff for me. So I was like taken to more creative means of generating slide art that aren't, I don't feel are taking away now from artists.
Yeah, I have to say that, AI should assist us with the tedious and boring tasks and let us do the art instead of the other way around. I don't know why we've done it in the reverse way. It shouldn't have been like that, but
yeah. Well, did you hear there's like a film that's come out where it was like entirely AI generated? Like
I heard about it.
It's just wild. I'm gonna look for it and put in the show notes after, but like it's just wild that like what you don't even need actors anymore. Like you just like create AI avatars. I was watching a video yesterday on like I wanted some help explaining like how to use this this tool called Paperclip. And I started watching the video and the guy looks real and he's like, "Hi, this is so and so's avatar." I'm like, "Oh my god, it's not a real person." It was a dude and a mic, like a human guy at a mic, but it was like AI generated. I'm like, what the hell is happening?
Yeah, I feel like even as someone who like grew up with tech, it's becoming very hard to tell apart whether something's like real or like AI generated. If it's like the visual or like the audio, it's like a real challenge these days.
Yeah, totally. And I will say on that, like, this is a beef that I have where like some banks are like trying to have this like voice authentication. They're like, "Oh, can we do we have your permission to use your voice print for authentication next time you call?" And it's like, how the hell, like,
that's what
protections do you have against like AI generated voice prints? What the hell? And the person could not explain like, we have security in place. I'm like, really? What do you have in place to be able to distinguish between like a human and an AI generated voice print? Like, just why?
There is actually no security in place, and this has actually given birth to a lot of scams now, where people just call and try to get just normal information out of you, so that they can actually clone your voice and then this can lead to your bank details and access to your bank.
Yeah, exactly. This is why I don't
pick
up from. This is why I don't pick up calls from.
Yeah, this is why I don't personally pick up.
Yeah, I don't anymore. I simply do not because like. No,
anything can happen in this era of AI, after AI world.
Yeah, this reminds me where like I think it came out recently where one of the big companies, they just use AI for their support, and then like they were able to like ask the AI agent for someone else's password or like a way to reset someone else's account, and like it all went through. It's crazy.
I think with Meta as well, there's an issue where like AI chatbots
reset
other people's accounts, and it's like these things, like the new measures, like the voice authentication, all of that. It's like, are these really secure? Because our ability to imitate has improved drastically, and the security hasn't always really caught up.
Yeah,
I think that's what we forget when we're trying to make AI make code for us. AI itself obviously does not have that senior dev experience, how to make a system and especially input security layer, but that's how we are just spacing it out so fast that we've forgotten the actual element of security.
Yeah.
I remember because I think in one of the vibe, like I think again, I saw a reel on this, so take with whatever I say is with a grain of salt as usual. I remember a lot of the vibe coded projects or like the apps that you might see online, they would have like almost no security systems on them in the slightest, whether it came to APIs or just anything bare bones, holding onto your personal information with like a stick and a rock. It was really, really interesting to see. And I was like, I'm scared.
Yeah, it's terrifying. I think it's terrifying that like now like founders can be like, I don't need that tech person anymore. I'll just vibe code this thing myself.
Oh my god, no.
And then potentially unleash some crap into the world.
Yeah. I've seen so many people coming out, especially on Reddit, telling that, they're freelancing as a cleanup after, people, a lot of startups just bring their AI or vibe coded code, and then they are responsible for the cleanup. And it charges quite a lot, honestly, nowadays. Like that's an actual job people are doing, cleaning up.
That's right. AI de-shitifier. I feel like that would be a great job. I mean,
that should be a job, and I think it is an upcoming job.
Yeah. It is a job. I think it's a way way less fun title than AI deshitifier, but the fact that
It
is
is-
like a real
It's
thing.
okay.
now.
We can start a company where we can call it that.
That's right. That's right.
I think
I did want to switch gears just a tad because we talked about like AI use in education, but like in the workforce, especially the four of you, preparing to enter the workforce. I know Amrithaa, you still got a couple of years till you're officially in the workforce, but what do you want? What kind of support do you want your employers to provide to you to help you be successful, especially as juniors, and especially in an era where so many people are saying like, we don't need juniors anymore?
Right. I think this is probably the most critical question in tech right now, because it is something that I genuinely sit myself with. A lot of rules have changed that we didn't anticipate. So obviously, as you said, there's a real conversation happening about AI taking over junior developers' roles, and that's not wrong actually. That is happening, but I think. It hasn't entirely eliminated junior roles. It has raised the floor of what junior actually means now, uh, which means it's harder to actually get an entry point in the industry, uh, which is again what we're all facing, I think. And it's no longer about writing code, but system design is where it's at now.
I agree with you 100% there. Like it's like for me, the thing I think that I would want or need most from a company is the privilege of doing things the hard way. Everywhere you just hear velocity, ship. And as a junior, you need time to actually understand what you're creating. Like it's those fundamentals that let you do the system design. Like we may be like delegating the implementation, but that design still needs to be done by you. And I sometimes I worry about, 20, 30 years in the future when us juniors are all the seniors, if we don't have the privilege of taking the time to understand this, it's just going to be such shaky foundations for the ones who are teaching others. So yeah, it's just, there's always this feeling, I think, as well, especially in this era of, juniors needing to prove themselves that they have worth and that, they shouldn't be replaced by AI, or that they're the ones who need to be there when there's so many other people who are really looking for jobs, layoffs, and with, them decreasing the number of roles. So being allowed and being able by a workplace to take things a bit slower is absolutely, I think, like the way forward and the only way forward to ensure that we keep those skills we need.
Yeah.
I also want to say that a lot of companies like I was able to work at this isn't really related. I wouldn't say this is terribly related, but Dell Technologies has like a mentorship program, which is basically for like women in STEM. Like, are you interested? Do you like women in STEM? And they pair you up with a specific mentor, and you get to learn from them for a couple of months, like corporate-ish way. I would say something that I wasn't too fond of at that moment was like um they had like an AI they for one of the presentations they had like an AI speaker on there, which was like a very interesting thing. I would say it's very slap in the face because again the speakers we
was
met
the speaker an AI avatar?
Yeah, it was literally an AI avatar.
Oh my god, that's so gross.
Yeah, and it's like it's very corporate, like it's corporate culture, yes, and again deviates from what I meant to say earlier. I think having time to actually learn what I'm making is the best thing ever because I remember throughout Toronto Tech Week when I wanted to like get involved with startups and everything, hearing the words B2B SaaS and like LLM and like very very terms I've never heard before in my life. It's very overwhelming at first. It's so overwhelming to like learn all this, and they're expecting you to know of that at the start. I feel like just having the time to know what you're making it's great. It's great. It's gonna grace me because I can't tell you what B2B SaaS means. Still, I still can't tell you, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think you make such a good point, and I think it's funny because it's the same problem that you're facing now as a problem I faced when I graduated, where it's like they expect you to know all this stuff, but university doesn't prepare you for it.
Yeah,
You're
and I feel like now now it's even more so because now they're expecting a production level kind of an expert for a junior entry level job, which is how are we going to get that kind of experience just straight out of university?
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that
for
bar
sure.
has definitely been raised.
How about you, Stella? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely important for companies not to force AI usage. Like I've heard of stories from like people I know at various companies where it's like, oh, you have to hit a token usage, which is like, it almost feels like it defeats the purpose. Like I want to be able to balance using AI for like something I actually want to use it for, and then like learn for parts that are like new to me and like something that I want to do for myself. Like whenever I use AI to do something without properly like also learning with it, it's like I don't actually remember what I did. Like if it's like more hands-on and like I'm learning while using AI, it's like okay, it's actually helping me, you know.
Yeah, I agree. It sounds like the consensus is like you crave to be able to do things on your own so that you have the base knowledge, and you need it both from like the institutions that are educating you and also from your potential employers.
Yeah, I would just say it's way more stable as a company to let the very end of the people, like the interns, the juniors, the people who might move up the corporate ladder, to let them have that knowledge and to let them learn. Because if you just don't teach them that and you try to like, yes, you can try to like condense the learning down to like 2 years to 6 months. It's more efficient, yes, in the short term, but I think the long term is what matters the most if you want to keep your company stable. And having your juniors or your interns just having that mentorship or that guidance of like, okay, I know how to do this. I know what this means. I think that's the bare minimum. And that's something that just from a company perspective, you should be allowing your employees to have. So it just doesn't collapse already.
Right, but I think that's the problem. Companies are actually thinking about only short-term goals, not actually. Yeah, they're not planning it out across for the future. And like for them, what's important is the output volume, but volume isn't always value.
Absolutely.
100%.
It's like these issues won't really be at their worst until 5, 10, 20 years in the future. There barely any companies I know are thinking we should do things the hard way now so that 15 years in the future, there's no world a company is thinking that. So it's hard as,
it's called corporate America or corporate culture for a reason. So.
Absolutely. So it's like we want to be able to make sure that we have the foundations we need to become seniors, to be able to, flourish in our field. But then you're feeling this pressure from all sides of being able to keep up with the flow of how everything is moving so much faster nowadays. So it's a bit of a balancing act, and it's hard to find that middle ground.
Yeah, especially for someone who's just fresh out of university. How are they supposed to find out that balance? I think that's where senior devs or your mentors come in to help you balance that out.
The interesting thing too is of talking to so many senior devs, and they're feeling overwhelmed with having to catch up with, stay up to date with all the AI stuff, which is quite interesting because I on the one hand, I think it's definitely important to have that mentorship from the senior devs, and then they're also being strained with the, oh my God, I have to stay up to date with all this stuff. And so it's a different set of stressors. And for you, it's like, I crave mentorship. Give me the mentorship so I can be better at my job. And I need to keep up with all this AI stuff as well, because it's just moving too fast. Like I've had like so many bouts of like depression and FOMO over the last like few months, because I'm like, I'm not doing enough. I'm not learning enough. Look at what my other like coworkers are doing. Oh my God, look at all this stuff that they're doing. And then I talk to other people, I'm like, oh my God, I'm in the same boat as you. We're all suffering.
I totally relate to you as well, because every day there's a new tool, there's a new thing that you have to try out. And if you don't, you feel like you are missing out on something. But it's like every day, and how do you keep up with tens of hundreds of tools coming up every day? That's something you have to
still those fundamental, and I think for you as Gen Z-ers, still making sure that you have those fundamental skills that you don't lose along the way, or make sure that you gain along the way, so that you can stay employable and will be future proofed into next generation seniors, because you will, as you said, be the next generation of seniors at some point.
That's true. We have to build the fundamentals first and not be AI native, but not be dependent on it.
Oh, I like that. I like that. And with that, we're coming up on time. This has been such a great discussion. But before we part ways, I want to just go through everyone and get your final parting words of wisdom on any advice that you would give to Gen Z developers to survive in this AI assisted world of that we find ourselves in nowadays.
It's funny how you're putting wisdom and Gen Z in the same sentence. I find it
Hey, I'm a huge proponent. Like I hate it when people like dismiss juniors as like, oh, you don't know enough, and it's like there's so much to be learned.
That's true. We hate it too.
It's so much. Like it drives me bananas. Like some of my best, like when I used to manage teams, some of my best employees were my interns, and I would give them harder work than some of my more senior people because like they had like really fresh perspectives and enthusiasm and like, yeah. So yeah, I do not dismiss juniors at all. I think all of you are super important to the future of development.
I think that's great to hear. Refreshing. Especially in this vibe coding era where everyone thinks that junior coders are all vibe coders.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, and I'm glad that all of you have been able to come on and like share your thoughts and what you've been feeling in this, because I don't think we get enough of that junior perspective.
No, thank you for providing us a platform, actually, to letting us speak.
Yeah. So who would like to go first with their final words of wisdom?
I can go first.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I feel like it's important to have a well-rounded view and understanding of AI and to be very intentional with your use. Like maintain your willingness to learn and like don't outsource your critical thinking. Like, yes, AI is helping you code, but it really is only helping me and like you personally if you're actually using AI to improve your own skills or understanding. Yeah, that's my takeaway.
Awesome.
Very wise.
Yeah, I'd say something a little bit similar. It's that there's no like time gained when you skip understanding the code you're making with AI. That's just time you're stealing and borrowing from your future self that needs that knowledge of what you're, able to skip with AI now. So just be really conscious about how you're using AIs and do not sacrifice your fundamentals.
I love that. Amrithaa, thoughts?
Okay, I would say stay curious. A lot of the times that's really important, especially in this kind of day and era. Second thing would be if you're still coding and if you're like thinking of new projects, especially software stuff, try using hardware. I think a lot of people get very scared of trying to use hardware stuff, but I think software and hardware coding projects really do go hand in hand. And I think AI still does not know how to screw drive things in, so I think you'd be really safe there. That'd be my advice.
Awesome, love it. And Divyasha?
As I said, I think we should not confuse being AI native with being AI dependent. Obviously, let AI help you. Be AI driven, but not depend on it. Rather, learn the fundamentals first using AI. I think you have to counterintuitively use less AI while you're still learning. Build the muscle first, and then use it as a tool to amplify whatever you're doing. And the other thing is, be the person who catches AI when it falls. As you said, AI de-shitters. We have to become that. Because everyone's just racing to use it faster, but no one's actually, looking at when it's breaking. And that's actually where our focus point should be. And yes, as you said, the worst case, you can always become the person who the company's hired, clean up after AI shits.
Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And with that, peace out and geek out. Geeking Out is hosted and produced by me, Adriana Villela. I also compose and perform the theme music on my trusty clarinet. Geeking Out is also produced by my daughter, Hannah Maxwell, who incidentally designed all of the cool graphics. Be sure to follow us on all the socials
by going to bio.site/geekingout.